It's as if there's an invisible voice that is carrying a single melodic line, start to finish, even though there are moments of silence within it. Hi everyone! Today I'm stepping back a little bit because I understand that this artist actually was before the Beatles. And, well, I don't know if this song was before the Beatles. Vlad's shaking his head no. Okay, but anyway, this artist, Roy Orbison, was before the Beatles, and he eventually got mixed in with the Beatles. I guess, hopefully, I have some of that story here to read, because I have some paragraphs here to read. But before I go to the paragraphs, let me just remind you that you can always check out my Ko-fi and Patreon membership pages if you want to find quite a few other recordings, videos that I've done that I can't release here on YouTube due to copyright issues with YouTube's system. So if you want to have access to those, you can always check out my Ko-fi and Patreon memberships. There are also other things there as well, different series, the Beatles series, The Wall, etc. But now let's go to Roy Orbison and see what I have to learn. Roy Kelton Orbison was an American singer, songwriter, and musician known for his impassioned singing style, complex song structures, and dark, emotional ballads. His music was described by critics as operatic, earning him the nicknames the Caruso of rock and the Big O. That's interesting. I'm curious to see what his style and his voice is like. In 1988, he co-founded the Traveling Wilburys, a rock supergroup with George Harrison. He was from the Beatles, right? Bob Dylan, Tom Petty, and Jeff Lynne. Okay, I listened to Jeff Lynne's Electric Light Orchestra quite some time ago. Those are some big names. Orbison died of a heart attack in December 1988 at age 52. 1 month later, his song You Got It was released as a solo single, becoming his first hit to reach the US and UK top 10 in nearly 25 years. Orbison's honors include inductions into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and Nashville Songwriters Hall of Fame in 1987, the Songwriters Hall of Fame in 1989, and the Musicians Hall of Fame and Museum in 2014. He received a Grammy Lifetime Achievement Award and 5 other Grammy Awards. Rolling Stone placed him at number 37 on its list of the greatest artists of all time, and number 13 on its list of the 100 greatest singers of all time. You know, I've listened to so many of these musicians and bands who've made it on these various lists. I feel like I need to print out the lists and hang them on the wall here where I can see who I've listened to and who I have yet to hear. In 2002, Billboard magazine listed him at number 74 on its list of the top 600 recording artists. He performed while standing motionless and wearing black clothes to match his dyed black hair and dark sunglasses. Almost like a classical musician, huh? Black tuxedo, serious, no misbehaving on stage. Interesting. In April 1963, Orbison was asked to replace Duane Eddy on a tour of the UK and top billing with the Beatles. When he arrived in Britain, however, he realized he was no longer the main draw. He had never heard of the Beatles. Well, I'm a little bit late. I don't have the excuse of the Beatles being particularly new, but... And I guess I always knew the name of the Beatles, but it's kind of interesting to know that he was on a tour with the Beatles, and yet he had never heard the name. Annoyed, he asked rhetorically, "What's a Beatle anyway?" To which John Lennon replied, after tapping his shoulder, "I am." On the opening night, Orbison opted to go on stage first, although he was the more established act. The Beatles stood dumbfounded backstage as Orbison simply played through 14 encores. Finally, when the audience began chanting, "We want Roy," again, Lennon and Paul McCartney physically held Orbison back. Ringo Starr later said, "In Glasgow, we were all backstage listening to the tremendous applause he was getting. He was just standing there, not moving or anything." You see, even in rock music, maybe if this is the way Roy Orbison was and he was so popular, you might begin to understand how we classical musicians can be so taken in by a performance of serious, staid, reserved performers who just sit there all in black and play their instruments. Through the tour, however, the two acts quickly learned to get along, a process made easier by the fact that the Beatles admired his work. Orbison felt a kinship with Lennon, but it was George Harrison with whom he would later form a strong friendship. On April 8, 1989, Orbison became the first deceased musician since Elvis Presley to have 2 albums in the US top 5 at the same time, with Traveling Wilburys Volume 1 at number 4 and his own Mystery Girl at number 5. In the United Kingdom, he achieved even greater posthumous success with 2 solo albums in the top 3 on February 11, 1989. The biggest hit from Mystery Girl was You Got It, written with Lynn and Tom Petty. You Got It rose to number 9 in the US and number 3 in the UK. The song earned Orbison a posthumous Grammy Award nomination. The single reached number 9 on the US Billboard Hot 100 and number 1 on the Adult Contemporary chart, returning Orbison to the top 10 for the first time in 25 years. Although it is an Orbison solo single, Orbison's fellow Traveling Wilburys bandmates Tom Petty and Jeff Lynne co-wrote the song and played instruments on the record. I guess I'll be hearing some fine musicians in this recording. According to the authorized Roy Orbison, the song was recorded at guitarist Mike Campbell's garage in Los Angeles, California, and mixed at George Harrison's residence in England. Okay, well, I've now heard enough and read enough and learned enough that I can appreciate some of these connections and the different names that I just read here and the different locations and all that signifies. So I'm looking forward to see what this actually sounds like.
Every time I look into your loving eyes, I see love that money just can't buy. One look from you, I drift away. I pray that you are here to stay. Anything you want, you got it. Anything you need, you got it. Anything at all, you got it, baby. Every time I hold you, I begin to understand. Everything about you tells me I'm your man. I live my life to be with you. No one can do the thing you do. Anything you want, you got it. Anything you need, you got it. Anything at all, you got it, baby.
what should I say? It's such a special set of lyrics. So simple. Somebody's obviously completely in love with somebody else. The music. It was very much its own song, and yet as I was listening, I was hearing things that reminded me of the Beatles. A little bit more orchestral sounding. Maybe a bit of Jeff Lynne mixed in there. But the voice, I understand now why he's called, what was it, the Caruso of rock? The Caruso of rock. What a beautiful, warm, nice voice. It has this very rich quality to it. Very expressive, very gentle, and yet very full as well. There's no, well, a lot of rock singers, let's face it, they don't always use the full quality of their voice. Understandably, because they're not trained. But this Roy Orbison, he has a voice, and I like it a lot.
Look, just to attach a picture.
Okay.
Every time I look into your loving eyes, I see love that money just can't buy. Most that one look from you, I drift away. I pray.
Concert Black? There you go. Oh, that reminds me. I was just thinking the other day, because in one of the recent videos, I guess I made a comment responding to some of the comments about my perpetual outfit. And I was just thinking, if you really are complaining about the fact that I'm wearing the same outfit every time I sit down here to record during this phase of my life, well, two things. First, feel lucky that I'm not just putting on my concert black every time I walk in here. I am incredibly comfortable in concert attire. I do it frequently. I could do it every day and feel perfectly fine. Secondly, if you really wish for a fashion show, you might want to go find a different channel, because that's not why I'm here. But then, don't be shocked if one day I walk in wearing something different. All right, let's go back to the beginning, and I'll pause along the way. Yes, this opening. It sounds like the Beatles. It sounds like the style of drumming that Ringo would do. It sounds like the strumming the Beatles would do. It's a bit fuller, bit more, perhaps, I don't know, I guess the recording quality had increased by this time, but stylistically it sounds incredibly like the Beatles.
Every time I look in.
And then this voice comes in. This is not John Lennon's voice. This is an entirely different kind of voice. And that was my first surprise, was I was set up to expect something kind of like the Beatles. And then every time I look, it's so... the sound just comes pouring out, and it's full and rich.
Every time I look into your loving eyes, I see love that money just can't buy.
It's not just the sound of the voice, it's the way he sings, the way he handles the notes. For example, when he enters here, every time I look, notice how he doesn't just come in. Every time I look, there's this sort of preliminary growing into it. Every time I look, and other places where he bends the notes, not in a blues style, like is fairly common in rock music, but in a more classical style. Classical singers don't sing just straight. There's a lot of freedom within the music and how to handle, and it's a very personal choice how each one sings. But you begin to notice the subtleties of this singer and that singer and the way they sing different pieces of music. Just like I'm beginning to notice the subtleties in the rock repertoire. If you listen to a lot of classical singers, you will start to notice those things as well. But here, he is handling the music more in the classical style.
I see love that money just can't buy. One look from you, I drift away. I pray that you are here to stay.
Right, I will get off this subject, I promise. But before I do, I want to say one more thing about why does it sound like classical? What do I mean by he's handling it classically? Well, here's a good example and probably fairly easy to hear. In the music, you see these little square boxes which are rests, moments of silence. And the way I would expect most singers in the rock and popular styles to sing this would be to treat each of these little chunks of notes on their own. Let's see here.
I pray
Yeah.
away. I pray that you are here to stay.
It's easy to sing. I pray that you are here to stay. You see, I treated each one as its own little, say, postage stamp bit of music. And then the instruments would fill the gap for us. Now, he doesn't fill the gap with his voice. He fills the gap with our imagination of what his voice is doing. I pray that you are here to stay. It's as if every single one of those is linked, even though his voice is silent. It's as if there's an invisible voice that is carrying a single melodic line, start to finish, even though there are moments of silence within it. That is a very classical... I won't say that it only exists in classical, but it is a very important part of classical style singing and even instrumental playing, is we learn how to handle a phrase so that there's this invisible continuity and connection no matter what's happening. And I hear him doing this with his voice, which I don't hear with a lot of rock style singers. And as an example, not to say that he's less of a musician or less of a singer, but he's much more in the rock style, would be John Lennon. If you compare Roy Orbison with John Lennon and the way they handle something like this, which has short melodic phrases, you will notice that John Lennon sings in short bits, whereas Roy Orbison sings with an eye for the entire line. I don't want to belabor the point too much, but this was just too good of a moment to miss talking about it.
Away, I pray that you are here to stay. Anything you want, you got it.
I like the chorus.
Anything you
This chorus also reminds me of the Beatles a bit. The way they would add extra harmonies to bits and pieces of their songs to brighten it up. And here, anything you want is given a much brighter, lively quality compared to the rich voice in love with this person. Now it's anything you want, and it's a bright, open declaration.
anything you want, you got it.
You got it.
Anything you need, you got it. Anything at all, you got it. Baby.
Okay, this is so interesting here. This is where I said maybe Electric Light Orchestra and the Beatles, because Electric Light Orchestra was very orchestral, strings and all of this stuff. And here we have this da-da-da-da-dum, which is very classical sounding. It doesn't have to be ELO. It can be anything. It's a very, you could say it's a classical trope even, but it works well here. Ya-da-da-da-dum. But then out of that, we get this very Beatley sounding walking down da-dum-ba-dum-ba-dum-ba-dum-ba-dum-ba-dum, with this sort of nasally sound in the guitar and this sort of quirky character to it. And yet this doesn't sound like a patchwork piece of music. It doesn't feel like somebody just grabbed a bit from there and a bit from there and was trying to copy. It's more like this is something that is its own style. Much like rock is its own style, and yet we see elements of blues in it.
You got it. Anything at all, you got it. Baby. Every time I hold you, I begin to understand. Everything about you tells me I'm your man. I live my life to be.
Now here, this time, it's not just the instruments filling in the rhythm and the imaginary legato line. Now we have the chorus giving a little bit of extra punch to it. I live. A repetition, an echo, but an amplified echo, because it's not just one voice being answered by another voice. It's one voice being amplified into dozens of voices. Kind of like somebody in love, and they want this expression to be shouted by 1,000 voices, just to make their point.
I live my life to be with you.
But still the voice.
Can do the thing you do. Anything you.
That drum there is almost like a timpani, the real bum bum bum, full, resonant, has a pitch to it, and it vibrates with that big timpani quality.
Can do the thing you do. Anything you want, you got it. Anything you need, you got it. Anything at all, you got it, baby.
And these strings are like the reaching out of a hand saying, here, everything, just take it, here, it's for you.
Anything at all, you got it, baby.
Bum, 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 bum.
Anything you want, you got it. Anything you need, you got it. Anything at all.
Ding, 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 ding.
I'm glad to give.
Before we go too far, let's go back to this little chorus section here. There's something I wanted to point out.
Anything you want, you got it. Anything you need, you got it. Anything at all.
It's so interesting because I was talking about his legato voice, is what we call it, when we have this feeling of continuous line, regardless of the silences in between. And here in this chorus or coda or whatever we call it, it's really starting out with a strong beat point, kind of locking us into the groove. It's been going on, but we've been focused on the voice and all of this wonderful stuff happening, and now it comes with a very clear
Anything you need, you got it. Anything at all.
and so we have this really strong bum, dum, dum sense of a beat. And yet his voice never changes. He doesn't change the way he's singing to lock into that beat as the other instruments have done. This very fluid, free legato line continues, and you hear it when he sings all here. He kind of sneaks into it. He doesn't sing all right on the beat. He comes sneaking in all, and the voice blossoms. Notice that.
Anything at all.
And then this time he arrived. Actually, I think he was just slightly off. But the first one is oh, and then it's loud. It's the peak of the crescendo, and then silence, and then oh, and it fades away. Again, that's an example of a larger sense of phrase, of line, than the little insertion. It's as if it's beginning here, continuing. It might be silent, but it still continues, and then what we hear as the start here is actually still at the peak volume, and then it descends from there. So we have a larger shape musically within those little fragments. Got it. I love that guitar there.
To give my love to you. I know you feel.
There's a little bit of a vocal backing here that is a bit more intimate sounding. It's a little more breathy. It's atmospheric and intimate at the same time. You almost don't notice it, but it's there. I like that. That was a great moment to kind of put the brakes on and reset so that we don't just fall into this mindlessly, robotically autopilot. It's great. It's a nice, consistent rhythm that carries us along. But if it goes on too long like that, our eyes start to glaze over. At least mine would. And so that little interruption there, it's great. It kind of sits us up straight, puts us square in our seats again, and we're ready to hear what comes next.
I know you feel the way I do. Anything you want, you got it. Anything you need, you got it. Anything at all, you got it, baby. Anything you want.
I love the way the strings go yada-da-da-dum, and immediately it's balanced. The ascent is balanced by a descent. It's almost as if this person is saying, I'll go up, I'll go down, I'll do anything, I'll go anywhere for you. Yada-da-da-dum, dee-dee-dee-dee, down the stairs to the basement. It doesn't matter where I'm going. I'm just going to go anywhere.
Anything at all, you got it, baby. Anything you want, you got it. Anything you need, you got it. Anything at all, you got it, baby. Anything at all, you got it, baby. You got it.
I enjoyed that one a lot. There is something very special about it. Of course, the expression is beautiful in it, but also the music itself, this mix of a bit more orchestral quality and still this kind of quirky, simple, relatable quality that the Beatles have, seems to have been all gathered together and placed within this song. It makes it very relatable, incredibly immediate feeling, within reach. And I guess that's a good thing because you got it. It should be within reach. It shouldn't take a lot of effort to dig through and try to understand all of this, what's going on, either musically or message-wise. It's there. You got it. And, well, it's pretty obvious I like the voice. And I enjoyed the music. It works incredibly well. And it holds together incredibly well. I liked the balance of it. The balance of the voices, the different instruments, the different parts, the different rhythmic effects. I liked... It didn't feel like anything particularly inventive or groundbreaking, but it wasn't meant to be, and it's not trying to be. It's not pretentious, neither is it too simplistic. It is just perfectly comfortably there, available, ready for us to enjoy, and ready for us to share with somebody that we would like to express those sentiments to. Well, I guess this time nobody will have any reason to doubt or question. I got it. I'll see you next time.